Welcome back to the Battle of Saunders Farm. So this is another odd one where for whatever reason I am so far under the scaling point with the size of my army that it was beneficial for me to keep adding men. So unlike every other battle I've shown, I actually went through and put as many men into service as possible in a way that I would be using them going forward. So, like, I could have just created like 2,500 man units and put as many of those out in the field as, or in my cores as possible, and that would have given me a reduction. But that sort of goes against what I've been trying to do with this campaign, which is not use ballast units. And even if it's max size units are kind of a reverse of that. It's sort of the same spirit, so I wanted to not do that. So instead, I went ahead and basically set up my army for probably close to what I'll end up using at Cold Harbor. We might go a little larger, but I ended up putting in somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000 worth of veterans into all of my infantry, and then top them off to 1250 using recruits. And this was all to drive my overall army size up as much as possible, mostly to try and drop the number of cannons I was facing at Saunders Farm. So you can see this is one corps, just a mishmash of stuff. Most of these are all equipped with whatever I have available just to make the sizes work. Same in this corps. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to add any men to my cavalry units just because I don't necessarily want to. I think everything I face in this battle is max size anyways, but I don't know about Laurel Hill or Shiloh, so we'll see what I end up doing here. But didn't add anything there. Also, I don't think the way the algorithm works, I don't think adding anything to the cavalry would really change much at all. So this is the first one of the first corps I'm actually going to be using. This is going to be the reinforcement corps. You only get 9 units despite the listed 10. That's because this corps comes in fully as reinforcements and brings a supply wagon, so that subtracts this guy off. I have this guy here just in case. He doesn't come in, but I wanted him there, so I at least got the full unit allotment I could get, even if I didn't get the units I wanted. But what I'm bringing in here is infantry scaled all the way up to 1600. Saunders Farm is one of those battles with very high default unit sizes, and so I'm going to be facing units that are anywhere between 2200 and like 2600. And there's enough of them, and you're fighting in unfavorable enough terrain that like units that are like 1250, you can do the battle, but it's a bad idea. Like, you're going to take really high losses, and your damage output is going to fall, and that's going to lead to higher losses. So this is one of this battle specifically, especially with the changes made in the mod that cause units to deal more damage, especially larger ones. You just can't get away with much smaller units, or at least, yeah, I guess you can't get away with it is the wrong way to describe it. You can do it, but you're just hurting yourself if you try. I tried it with, I think, 1400 size units and determined that there was just going to be more benefit to upsize. So around 1600 is fine. You could go higher. This is one of those cases where you could probably go all the way up to like 2000 or something, and I don't think you would touch scaling. I don't care for units that size. They just take up too much space and get clunky. So I didn't go that high, but always an option. So what I'm bringing in as well with artillery is just some long-range support stuff at this point. So I used as many 20-pounders as I could. I have 8 left. I could have thrown them into another unit of my backup unit of 14, what usually the 14-pounders are in. But I decided I'd take the 10-pounder parrots instead. There's a lot of artillery to get rid of, so these guys perform quite well, even so. And the other unit I have with 8 doesn't have 3 stars, so I figured the extra, 35% damage multiplier is well worth the 2 guns, or I guess bringing the 10-pounder parrot as opposed to the 20-pounder. Also got 1 unit of snipers. This is sort of my utility setup. Like most of what I have in the battle is what I'll need ahead of time. This just helps me grind down the enemy forces. It gives me some extra vision if I need it, and the infantry lets me reinforce wherever I need to go. So my main corps is also all 1600s. We're bringing 3 24-pounder howitzers, and then all the rest of this is 20-pounders, and then we're bringing 3 snipers. It's a mix of 2-star and 1-star. A lot of these not all of these have the greatest stats. We had to go all the way up to 1600. We did have to take some penalties there because it was, I would say, around 400 recruits apiece. But most of these stats are going to go right back up after this battle, and we're going to end up with about, in the 1,000, 1,200 range. So very, very good shape to re-equip for Cold Harbor, or I guess Laurel Hill. I'll probably reuse these cores for that. In terms of weapons, I basically swapped all these units out to use the best weapons I had available, just because this is a hard enough fight. I don't want to be using any worse rifle than I really need to. So I'm basically using, so I think anything over 60, 61, something like that, gets 1863s. I don't have enough of them to do that for all my units, but that's what I aimed for. I think it was like 58 and higher, got 61s, and then anything below that, I guess I ran out or didn't have enough here. Went to Harper's Ferries, and then dropped to Enfield below that. There's an argument to be made on whether the Enfield is really better or worse than the Harper's Ferry. They're pretty close stat-wise, but the Enfield's cheaper, so... Am I remembering that right? Yeah, the Enfield's a little cheaper, so we can go on the units that are going to take more damage. Don't think there's a whole lot else going on. I put the point I got from Mansfield into training. I'm gonna get that topped off, and then the last of any points I have remaining will probably go into logistics. The reconnaissance is nice, but I don't need it. So just dump it into logistics. That'll make Washington a little easier. So that is going to be it. Let's see, the last battle we had, I think it's a transfer, so it caused training and armory to go up a little bit. These have both kept creeping higher. I think I've been doing pretty well, like getting that armory back down. I did pretty well getting that armory back down from those couple of missions I had that push it up real high. But I'm still going to be running into, scope rifles and stuff at Saunders Farm and at Laurel Hill. So lots of 24-pounders, lots of 1861s and 1863s. So they've got pretty much endgame equipment. But that is going to do it. So I will head into the battle, and we'll go from there. So we're going to be facing... We've got 37k going against 64. For reference, let's see, I want to say this number before I upsized everything, I was facing about 66k, and the big one is I was facing 220 guns. And when those guns are 3-star units of 24-pounders, that hurts. So going larger has the benefit of more staying power, and also on top of it, reducing that. Depending on how your army is set up and where you are in the campaign, you might not have the same results here. You may be going a little smaller, or it really depends. This is why I always recommend, if you care about this sort of thing at all, have 2 points in recon, because then you can see when odd stuff like this happens. So, we'll get going. So my basic setup is going to involve most of my units going off to the right. So I'm going to bring 5 infantry brigades to flank around the right side through the gap in the line that exists early on in the battle, bringing 2 24-pounders over to support that line, since they're going to have to plow through a lot of infantry and then hold off a lot of charges. I'm also going to be sending up the 2 skirmishers to go up there to help clear the line, and then to go after more artillery that's going to be up in the corner. And then I'm going to leave 1 unit to go up the center to distract all of the free roaming units. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to end up fighting a whole lot more stuff in the woods, and that tends to end very badly. So setting my units, not drawing lines this time because I'm completely stacked up. My goal here is to have the units walking through the open as much as possible. So I'm going to have to adjust them midway through. Snipers move well enough through any terrain, so they can just go straight across. Also, I don't have to worry about them getting spotted. That would be particularly bad because if unit charges in the wrong direction, bad times. I'm also going to be sending skirmishers up and across first. That lets them get in position to hit the unit that is going to try and block me from behind, and also lets me deal with the cavalry unit that's up there. So there's a couple of infantry units that will come down, and there's some scoped rifles units that are going to come down there, as well as some artillery that will move forward depending on what you do. So I actually should have moved my units up there. If I could have gotten Arthur to stop and target something while he was all the way out in the open, he would have been easier to kill off later. That's why I sort of moved up real quick, but I didn't manage to get him. So now I have to get these units going across. I'm not sure what the absolute fastest way to do it is, but this more or less works. So just sending everything across. That 1 skirmisher unit I just drew those lines for, that I should be going into the woods and then across exactly on the board edge. I'm going to get spotted. It's going to mess up things a little bit. There are a couple different ways to play this battle. You could sort of push to the middle. You can push from the left. You can try and take out the enemy reinforcements that come in and then come in from the northwest. This is the way I like the most, because you end up, when you take the northern flag, you end up in range to get hit by the units on in the fortifications on the eastern side of that flag, and getting them out of there is a giant pain. So instead, I'm going to get behind those fortifications entirely, push them out, and then basically defend from that position as I slowly close the noose on the rest of the army. So we've got our second set of reinforcements that came in, sending a few units over, and then sending some units up to sort of support this center area and keep their units moving in. So you can see that. So there's a gap in the line until that unit arrives, and so I managed to get through before it showed up. And now I'm going to start hitting it from behind to try and get rid of it before, so I don't have to try and cross the river under fire. So, sort of trying to do some damage to the skirmishers. Probably, I don't think it's a good exchange, but I want to get more of their infantry committed over there. So I'm just staying in sight, and this is I think the worst unit that I have in the entire battle, which is fortunate because it's going to take some of the highest losses in the battle. There's just no real way around it. There's a dozen artillery batteries up there. Like, any unit that's alone is just going to get hammered. So we managed to get that infantry unit out of the way, and now we can just come straight across. And I'm moving these detached skirmishers up so that I don't take fire from the Iron Brigade. Actually, I thought historically the Iron Brigade had been dissolved by this point. I wonder if it's a different... No, there were a couple different ones during the Civil War. I wonder if it's supposed to be a different one than the Army of the Potomac one. If anyone happens to know that, definitely let me know in the comments. That'd be interesting. So I'm sort of setting up a contain here, and I'm sort of moving skirmishers back in and out of sight to try and get their infantry to commit. While I, keep setting up over here without too much interference. There are several infantry units that start up in the fields to the north of where my line is setting up, so you got to be careful about going up there too early. But this is going pretty well. The cavalry mostly left us alone. We're baiting some units down up here. None of those units are charging across to the east. It's always good. I also left some detached skirmishers south of the river because otherwise, if you route the Iron Brigade, I guess I'm setting them up now. If you route the Iron Brigade across the river, then you have to dedicate units to keep defending that direction. So it's just better to keep pushing them to the west, where they won't cause you problems. So I'm not committing too much in the west because I'm not seeing units moving over at this point to the east, and I would have to fight units in cover in the west, and I just don't want to do that until I have more artillery support. So just routing units, slowly moving up my line. I'm in no hurry. You've got several extra hours after the timer expires. I guess this is the first timer after the second timer expires. So you've got quite a lot of time in this battle, and we're going to use most of that to take our time and let our artillery do the work. So there's going to be a lot more pausing in this battle. This battle is... There's a lot of stuff going on, and trying to get it right is pretty difficult, just because it's not quite as straightforward as some of them. So in this case, I decided to go for... play it as close to as well as I can, rather than trying to speed things up a little bit. So it's going to be a lot more pausing, issuing orders, and deciding where I really need to send units. So be a little longer than normal, but so we're doing pretty well. We've managed to get the first 2 units out. We've got those artillery units in the north that I'd like to get at, but you can see that infantry is starting to come down, so I gotta be careful. I really don't want to pull that in and fight. I guess it could be alright if I was fighting it across the river, but I kind of want them all to go into the center, because then I just only have to fight from one direction. Those 2 artillery units up there are really annoying. Like, a lot of the battle is determined on how well you can get rid of those, because most of the stuff is further south, but those are hard to get rid of, because I only have 24 pounders up there, and if you can't get them with your snipers, then it's hard to remove them, and you really don't want to have to walk forward into them with infantry. Like, you're almost bound to get charged by the stuff that's standing in the field, and then you're taking, canister from 24 pounders, and that ends very badly. So they decided not to pursue, so we're just going to hit them with the snipers until they rout. I'm starting to move forward. I want to put a little more pressure on the west to try and convince these units to go down there. And I'm getting a little sick of the scoped rifle skirmishers going after me. You can see I'm taking some decent damage on the 24 pounder unit down there. Thankfully, I've got enough 24 pounders at this point that I can afford some of the losses, and there's just not a good position for it. I'm not, with how far I've had to fall back down there. Like, sometimes you can defend a little further forward, but without having committing more units over there earlier, which really weakens your eastern push, you kind of don't have a choice. So I'm falling back here. This is kind of risky because, I'm leaving my artillery exposed, but as long as I keep that unit's attention on the falling back infantry unit, they're going to take canister to the flank, which is about as good as it gets. That's going to be nearly point blank 24 pounder canister. They just used their volley, started to rout. So, and now they take, that was the 20 pounders. So we don't quite get the 24 pounder canister, but still. Worked out well, so I can get that unit back up there, taking more damage from the artillery. This is a little interesting. The enemy artillery has moved up pretty far to try and get to me. I don't feel like I've seen that in the past. but that's going to provide the opportunity to, they're coming forward, they're doing damage to my 1-star unit because they're that far forward, but it's going to let me start targeting them and clearing them out a little earlier, that part's nice. So I'm trying to, with the units coming in from the west, I'm trying to avoid really getting in a straight up firefight. I'm trying to make sure I'm hitting them from the flanks with whatever side they're pointing at. Also got to be careful, I have these 2 units coming across, and so I'm going to push forward again on the east because I want those units to stay focused over here. I don't want them walking through that middle patch of woods because I want to take that over soon, now that I have another set of reinforcements coming in. So I want them to leave there. So I've got some units hidden, they've decided to go somewhere else. I can send some more infantry across. I'm going to send some to the middle. One thing to note, that middle clump of trees and the trees on the left where the Union unit infantry currently is don't have the greatest, I guess, stealth values. I'm not quite sure how terrain stealth works, but you have the problem where you'll have units sitting in heavy cover next to other units sitting in heavy cover, and some of them are visible for some reason. So that's another one. This is another one of those areas that has that, so you got to be careful about when you push up in there, because then the artillery sees you and it's just going to wail away. So you can see I was able to hit one of the artillery units with my snipers. I can't quite get to the other one. First because the supply wagon was in the way, and then there's enemy infantry that's in the way. So I can't really get to that one unit, and that guy is sort of going to be my bane for a while. But we're doing good. We're pushing back the infantry. We haven't had too much come over and charge us. You can see I'm only moving forward in the south because I don't want to get into canister range of that unit up there. See some units starting to move down, so I've got to be careful about when I go. But I think, yeah, at this point I decide, okay, the infantry's starting to come in. I want to block them from too much more from following in behind it, so I'm going to move the line up and try and hit that artillery unit with rifle fire. I'm keeping a couple units in reserve rather than spreading out, just because you never know when they charge, and my line is very thin compared to the amount of Union troops over there, so I might, if I can't cancel the charge, I might actually have to fight, and then I'm going to need a unit to replace the frontline unit. Because you can see those frontline units are taking a lot of damage. We're already down to almost 1,000. I think that on 6-3, I think that unit still has detached skirmishers out. Tried to move forward with my weak unit, took another good chunk of losses from those skirmishers. And now I decide I really want to get rid of that artillery, and I want to get rid of those skirmishers, so I'm going to start moving up. But it can't be with that one unit, it's taking too many losses, so he's mostly going to sit for the rest of the battle. But pushed out some more artillery. There's a bunch hiding in the woods here you got to be careful of. Keeping an extra skirmisher unit up there just in case something happens. Sometimes the cavalry moves weird ways. But starting to get the snipers working on the enemy artillery, and then I've finally got most of my counter battery artillery coming in, so I'll be able to wreck those 3 units of artillery sitting there and start working on the center of the camp. And again, I'm not pushing. I want to be very careful about how hard I push in the north, because there's a lot of, I'll call them free units up there. See, I just tried to walk forward to that unit, just between the 3-star units and the cannon up there, just got destroyed. So came in a little too hard there. Yeah, overall you got to be really careful about moving into that north area, because there's just so many units up there that if you slide a unit or two into the cover, you can get charged by a dozen units, and just, then they sit up there and you have to flank them even further from the north. And if you end up having to try and cross that northern river under fire, you're going to have a real bad time. But at least that rifle unit routed, so it's not going to take too many more losses. And we've got some backup there, so we're in pretty good shape. Starting to clear out the infantry. We get lucky in the north and west that there's just not any other units up there. Sometimes more of the Union infantry will sort of slide over to that side more, which makes coming around and flanking any units in those woods harder. But I decided to kill off this supply unit just because it's blocking my vision. And I slide a 1-star skirmisher unit around. Since most of the infantry is committed into the woods, that's not great, but it means they're not in the north. So I'm able to get some fire on that artillery unit and hopefully push it back. I'd like to get a supply wagon up to the snipers, but it's kind of hard to have time to do it, and if you put it out in the open, the cavalry will go after it. So they just gotta wait. But we're in real good shape here. Gonna flank all of this artillery and get rid of it. Sending some of the infantry units to the west to sort of get into position to start trying to encircle the entire position. I don't want to do it too early. I think the reinforcements have already come in. I didn't memorize the timer. I think it comes in around the time that your second corps comes in. If you went for a left flank attack, you would absolutely have time to get some infantry up into the northwest, and then you could get the 3 cavalry units pinned to the corner, and then you'd have to deal with the, I think it's 5 infantry and 1 artillery or something like that. So, Ghost Cav happens. They're headed towards artillery, which is kind of worst case scenario. They aren't going to get the supply wagon at least, and so I just set all my units on the run and then just try and let them fire. I think we get a canister shot off. Overall, that could have been far worse. Anytime Ghost Cav runs through your artillery, you can take horrible losses, but I think we have them almost routed between all the infantry fire, and they run through it pretty quickly, and they don't get the Spencer shots off. So, not a great scenario, but it could be worse. I'm going to have to send some units after it to chase it down, just because we don't want that thing running around in our behind our lines. So I'm pulling off a bunch of extra units. These guys those 2 units are pretty beat up anyways, so they're a perfect candidate to go hunting down some cavalry. And now I've mostly got my line set up where it's going to sit for quite a while. You can see there's 3-4 different artillery units that are in vision. So we're going to clear all those out before we start pushing the infantry forward much again. I'm going to go forward a little bit more. I really want to get that last artillery unit pushed back. But the cavalry's going up into the northern corner, which is perfect. If they go south, then we have to chase them for quite a while. So we'll get them pinned in and get rid of them, and then we can get the snipers back around to start hitting the stuff in the north. There's a bit of a black hole in terms of vision stuff in the north, which we'll see later is a little difficult to clear out, but that's why you got to be really careful with this cavalry. It's all Spencer armed 3-star cavalry, and they really hurt. Had a humorous event that occurred when I was doing some basic testing on this battle to see what the timers were. I had a Ghost Cav unit run straight through an infantry unit that was by itself, shoot it like 4 or 5 times, deal like 500 casualties on its way through, and then on top of that, it ran straight into my supply wagon, shot it a couple of times, and killed it. Fortunately, I don't have video of that, but yeah, that wasn't pleasant. So, all in all, I got off light this time around. So, finally got that 1 artillery unit. Got to be careful about moving the snipers down, just because I don't know what's in those woods. And there's a lot of cavalry running around, so if I get spotted, I'm going to lose a lot of snipers. Trying to get my line set up so that I can get the artillery, but I can't push forward too quick. It's a fine balance of letting the 24-pounders move up, let those do a lot of work, and then push the units back when you can, but not walking forward and taking fire from 4 or 5 units at the same time. So, starting to clear out Arthur. I don't notice it until later. There is an artillery unit that is directly under the flag of, oh, what is it? I can't read it, but under, I think it's Sweeney. Basically just north of the southern victory point, there's an artillery unit hiding in there that I can't see at all, and I can't target it. And I'm eventually going to notice it, but I think maybe, yeah, right there, maybe I just noticed it. Let's see what I target. Nope, don't see it yet. But getting that unit in the open, also good. So we've got the rifle, got them trapped, trying to avoid that skirmisher unit shattering, so I'm pulling it back. But overall, this is going real well. Everything's sort of penned in where I want it. I'm getting all the artillery moved up. And once we start clearing those units, then we can just start blasting away at their artillery. Also, I get really fortunate here, and for whatever reason, the supply wagons all decided to... I guess the supply wagons must have all been sitting by the artillery that I killed off in the southwest. And then when I moved my units forward, all of the supply wagons decided to retreat north, and maybe I must have had something in vision that prevented them from moving south. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to be able to capture a bunch of supply wagons when normally they sit in the middle of the battle and empty themselves and stuff you can do about it. But I find 4 wagons up here, which is just fantastic. So, got a bunch of artillery moved up, moving over my 24-pounders to where they can hit stuff. I'm basically not going to try and clear out any of the western fortifications until very late in the battle. They're pretty strong. You can clear them if you get, 5-6 units plus artillery firing at them, but there's just no point really. I'd just take extra losses, so I've got plenty to worry about around the northern victory point, so I don't need to make any extra work for myself. And you can see my infantry line on the west is pretty thin. Part of that is I bank on these units in the middle and on the east, drawing most of the charges, but that's also, I just draw units out of there because, I just don't want to attack that direction. Also, no need to take the victory points early on. So, just cleaning up the supply wagons. I could be moving this infantry around to the north more, but I don't entirely remember exactly where the reinforcements are, and I don't want to accidentally get into a fight in the north, so I just wait. And I'm sliding some infantry units around. As units start taking damage, I'd say around 400 to 500 casualties, I start pulling them out and trying to replace them with a different unit that hasn't been doing as much fighting. Just spread out the casualties a little bit. In some ways, 1600 is probably higher than I possibly... It might be higher than I want to use going forward. I'll have to see about Cold Harbor. I might have to go up that high. Probably a good idea. If I don't trigger scaling, that 1600 is probably about where I'm going to end up. But getting these units, the big units, ground down is not necessarily a problem. They're going to get enough experience to recover any of the losses. And they're going to make back a lot of what I put in for recruits as well. So I finally noticed that artillery unit and futilely attempt to click on it over and over. I just keep getting, I guess, Schweitzer? But yeah, Wainwright is sitting behind there, and I can't hit him. So my eventual solution is, because I can't get him, I just target the infantry unit he's sitting on and wait for collateral damage to do the trick. Unfortunately, that takes forever. The good news is Wainwright is out of ammo, so he's firing very, very slowly, so he's not doing a whole lot anymore, but I wish I'd noticed him sooner. I'm not sure if it would have been worth targeting him over targeting the units in the open. Probably not, just because of how long it'll take. So, we've got a lot of charges coming in, sort of shifting units out and around to make sure we hit them with multiple units whenever they get into position. Bringing the snipers down, I really want to... I keep seeing that northern artillery unit, and I really want to get rid of it. But there's infantry in the way, so can't do it yet. I'd also like to get my... I try and move my snipers up here. They're going to take some extra losses. What I also don't know is on top of that artillery unit is also sitting their last 3-star skirmisher unit. And so if I move forward, I get spotted. If I move backward, if I sit where I am and don't fire, then that unit doesn't get seen. But I wanted to try and get better vision on what I suspected was a sniper unit there, and I just don't manage to pull it off. So eventually I'm going to pull those guys back out. But slowly working on that artillery. So now I'm starting to move up and around. There's a weak spot in the line, basically just south of where my snipers are sitting right now. So 11-1's getting pulled out as well. Bringing some more extra of those units on the west up and around to try and push through there. While it's a weak spot, it's not very weak because the fortifications are placed such that they're pretty hard to get behind and flank, and they have pretty good lines of fire, so breaking into the camp from the north is kind of difficult, except if you go right across the widest part of the river, where if you can get across and get set up, you're fine, but getting across without getting charged and having to fight stuff in the woods is pretty hard. So I decided to risk going across. I don't think there's any skirmishers up there, and it turns out I can get into range. So I can finally start working on that artillery. Our line in the east is still looking pretty good. We've taken, decent expected numbers of losses, but we've still got units in reserve and going pretty well. And yeah, it just keeps charging back and forth. I run that unit to get them in the line, so we're facing, optimally I always want, 3-on-1 plus artillery firing in there. So I see the cavalry unit going after, but then when I pull a bunch of stuff, he decides to run away instead, which is nice for me. Would have been really annoying to chase him back if he'd gone through my lines. So I was doing some more research for someone who was asking a bunch of questions on the forums, and one of the things I had discovered is, well, not discovered, just looked at the numbers and found them and actually graphed them out. So the cover curve goes from about 2.25 to 0.4. So if you manage to hit a unit that is in 0 cover, they will take 2.25 times more damage. If you're shooting at a unit in 100% cover, you will be dealing 0.4 damage. It's worth noting that artillery takes half of, basically it's half the cover bonus of whatever they're in. So if they're in 100%, they're only getting 50% of it. So I think I finally got that artillery unit back up. Sort of trying to take the flag to see if I can bait some stuff down. Doesn't really work. But I guess that cover information doesn't really tell us anything we didn't already know. Shoot units in the river, it's good for you, bad for them. But it's always nice to have exact numbers. One of the other things I discovered while looking at that is that so each unit type has its own damage modifier. So if you are shooting at an infantry unit, it takes 1.072 times whatever damage you normally deal. Skirmisher takes 0.9, cavalry takes 1.1, and artillery takes 1. So that, again, nothing earth-shattering there. That just confirms what we already knew. It's, skirmishers take less damage than other unit types. Cavalry seems to take more damage than other unit types. So I'm trying to push in here because I saw for a brief second that there was an artillery unit up there. I'm not sure what I did to lose sight of it. Probably went slightly lower, but so I see the artillery unit, and I'm sort of sacrificing that skirmisher to get the chance to get rid of it, because I know they're down to 1 to 2 more artillery units, and that's it. But I've got all of it, and I could just, do what I want to do. Real nice of that skirmish unit to charge me, so I can kill it off. I have to back out my, I don't know, the supply wagon's doing its best to scout out my skirmishers, or my snipers, which is never nice, but thankfully I get lucky, and I think the charges were already on cooldown, so that, a unit starts moving up that way, but I don't actually get a charge, so I don't lose anything for it. And just capture that for the extra men, even though that guy's empty. And you can see I've started setting up infantry up north to try and complete the envelopment, but still a lot of free units up there, so I don't want to risk doing it yet. One thing with the long-range artillery is I try and stay on top of it, so when it's not firing at enemy cannon, it is firing at least a unit that isn't in fortifications. Right now I have it firing at that cavalry unit, because that's about where the enemy artillery unit is, and so again I can't see it, so I'm going to try and kill it through collateral damage. It's not particularly effective, but it's better than nothing. I'd like to move my 3-star sniper unit up there to hopefully see the artillery, but I can't do that while the cavalry's there, so extra bonus, if I can get rid of the cavalry, then I can afford to finally move up. Also targeting the skirmishers whenever I can see it. Targeting the generals, I remember to think about it, but in general, yeah. Overall, I think in this battle it's more important to keep knocking down the size of the infantry units, so that, you need to get them smaller so they stop, so when you hit them they take enough damage that they start falling back as opposed to pushing the attack. Maybe it'd be better than I probably should have killed off the generals I can see already, just because it would lower their morale regen, and that would lead to less charges. Though I guess them charging in is good, because they're charging into the middle of a concave at this point. Hard to say. For how little time it would probably take, it'd probably take one full round of fire to just kill off the general. It'd probably be better to do that, but another thing, so I guess before I get to that, so I decide to try and cross the river. So I push all the infantry across. I have doubled up units in the center in case really trying to turn any charges. Because I really want to get that artillery unit that I know is just blasting away at me. So I feel like I've got a pretty strong line. I don't have any artillery backing up here. Finally see that unit. I'm going to take canister to do it, but I'm just going to get rid of him. Should have that skirmisher unit up there pretty soon, so it should take the canister fire. Got a charge. We're going to get into the woods, but it's not too bad, and we stop the other charges. So we're going to get lined up. And then once we have that northern line of woods, then, you could argue the battle was over a while ago, but the battle is definitely over at that point, because they're just going to be sitting around in an open field. So, running those 1-star skirmishers back was just me returning them to their parent unit. It turned out really favorable, baited the cavalry in. This 1-star unit, I should have retreated it. I didn't realize how much damage I was going to take from that unit sitting in the just below the artillery. The unit sitting, I guess it's Booker. I thought I was going to be able to get in position and rout him pretty quick, but I'm not successful, and I'm going to throw a couple of units into that place and just take a lot of losses. So probably could have done better. Walked the rifle unit in there, took an extra volley I didn't need to. Well, we finally got that artillery piece. Snipers don't have a whole lot they can do anymore. Like, I could put them in front of some of the infantry on one of the sides, but it's hard to get them into a spot where they aren't going to get charged eventually when I'm not paying attention. So the line that I can't really get infantry into because they get hit by Butler. Should have increase the size of the video slightly before I started doing this, and I can read it. So I'm going to put some snipers up there to be able to hit them. But I keep trying to slide a unit in there, and now I'm going to have a 2-star unit that's going to route. Just should not be trying to slide. I should, you know, I have my spot up there. I should just sit in the woods and let the snipers work a little bit instead of rushing things. I've still got 2.5 hours that I can wait. So at least finally realized this isn't going to happen. I need to wait. So I back off. Their 100-man skirmish unit decides to charge me for whatever reason. But we finally break that unit. So I don't really want to push forward again because I'm just going to run into the next line. So I'm just going to back off, and anytime that unit tries to go into the fortifications, we're going to go after it. Another skirmisher charge. I'm not really sure why they decided to do that, but that's nice. Finally get rid of them. I guess they don't have much artillery to spot me with, or to shoot me. And they've spotted me anymore. So I'm just cleaning up my lines a little bit. At this point, I probably have moved the 20-pounders and stuff up even closer. But this is a pretty good setup. Once you get that northern line successfully set up, you're pretty much set. You know, I've got both 24-pounders up pretty close because I'm not going to take collateral damage anymore. And just every time the infantry walks forward, it gets blasted away. This northwest section is still a little of a mess, but we're starting to work at it. Probably should have moved the wagon around to get ammo onto those snipers a little earlier. So, making yet again, another attempt to try and get that unit out of there so I can close the gap. And I'm not sure where you must have to basically be on the flag or something to try and get a flanking shot on that line. Just not sure where it is. This time I should have 4 or 5 units hitting it, so I should be able to break it. Though then charges and stuff come up. But overall, this is going really well. There's been definitely some couple mistakes that I've been watching now, but can't really complain. It's pretty clean. You know, I probably could have gotten away with maybe 1,000 less losses if I played absolutely perfectly and everything had gone right, but only very rarely do you get that. And at this point, I make the mistake that I misremember the timer. I can finally see that last artillery unit, so I'm going to try and get rid of him. But I start sending units up because I misremember the timer being 2030 as opposed to 2130. So I've beaten them off enough I can move up and take the flag without too much trouble. But I really didn't need to. I could have just waited another 45 minutes to an hour and then moved forward to taking the flag, and I would have been better off. This is where I'm feeling the lack of units on my left a little bit. It would have been nice to have if I'd had a few more units, then I could have crushed that one unit in the fortifications and then just surrounded this gap, but wanted the extra artillery units. Honestly, I probably could have dropped a sniper. Like, it's just hard to find enough spaces to get them in to do stuff, and they don't do it when they're firing at fortifications. They do almost nothing, so unless they're flanking them. So if I did it again, I would probably drop a sniper, and then I would have an easier time. I'd have an extra unit to hopefully, push stuff out. So I sent the skirmisher forward because I still think Wainwright is still hiding in there. So now that we've captured the flag, we only have until the contested timer ends, until the battle ends. If we hadn't captured it, we'd get the extra hour and a half. I have not tried, I don't know for sure if the contested timer is still active and 2130 hits. I don't know if I guess you draw in this case. I don't know if you would win or lose, or I don't know what the outcome would be. So, don't have the exact information for you on that. But you can see if I hadn't taken it, we could just wait, and we would have full cleared the entire map in what I would say one of the hardest battles in the game. Okay, so that is an excellent result. Just over 9,000 casualties. It's going to be about 7,500 after medicine, and we didn't quite get all of them, but we got really close. Got all their artillery, got a bunch of the cavalry, got enough captures that we're going to get the full 1,000 recruits back. So we're going to, out of this battle, we're going to come ahead by about 3,000 men, which is always good. You can see, 24 pounders did great as expected. Infantry units did pretty well. Some of them took pretty high losses, but they killed quite a bit doing it, so that's always good. Counter battery did well. Yeah, pretty good results. Most of the snipers did pretty well when they had targets. I think one of them I don't really hit too much with, so he doesn't do too much. But these are all 3 stars, so it doesn't matter. As expected, most of my casualties came from Wainwright, because I didn't even notice he was there for a good 30 minutes, and then he lasted until the very end of the battle. Their skirmishers really hurt. Scoped rifles are really good on 3-star units, if you can't get rid of them. But, not too bad. A couple units didn't do a whole lot. I think that one that took 900 was the 1-star. Lost 2 officers and got a couple wounded, but we have plenty of officers remaining, so that won't be too much trouble. Got a lot of 63s. Got 159 Whitworth TSs, which is fantastic. That means I can replace all my losses and get close and stay up at 4 units at 275. Bunch of Spencer carbines that I probably won't use. 24-pound howitzers. The random 12-pound howitzers, I'm not sure why those are here as opposed to something else. But yeah, 11,000 men for 7,500, so out of that battle we came out ahead by a decent amount. And yeah, just sort of gonna go through the units here and see the experience gains we made. One of the things I realized is that I probably should try and get my units into melee a little bit more if I can manage to do it without taking too many more losses, because while my efficiency, firearms, and efficiency, morale, stamina, and firearms all are pretty good, I'm really hurting my units and having very low melee only from the perspective of what do you need, how much experience do you need to get a unit to a 2-star or 3-star. Like if I had 50 stats across the board, then I'd have a 2-star unit more or less, and then I would be able to, firearm morale, stamina all go up real high pretty easily. So I'd be able to use lower ranking officers in those units if the melee was higher. So, maybe something to try and do on a future attempt. Yeah, in most cases, the stats are about where they were before I added recruits, if not higher. Snipers aren't going anywhere at this point, but that's fine, they're doing their job. And we killed slightly fewer than they got reinforcements, and they got a 4-point bump in both training and armory, which isn't great. I think that means I'm probably going to be facing sniper rifles at Laurel Hill, where I would have been facing Spencers before. But that's manageable. Figure it out. So, that was Saunders Farm. It is a really tough battle. If you can get around 10 or 12k casualty losses of that battle, you're doing great. So just don't rush it. Take the extra time, and you can come out pretty well on it. Okay, so I'll be moving on to Laurel Hill. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.